I've had enough, said Natalia, pushing her plate away. The following day, Frazer left straight after breakfast. The conversation at dinner the night before had left him with many questions, and he knew that Brett might give him some answers. He found him in their office at Frandotech. After Brett had offered him some coffee, they sat down together. Is the company doing well? Frazer asked, getting straight to the point. Yes, he replied. I don't understand how you did it, but without you, we wouldn't be where we are today. Frazer had helped him a lot in the past, and he was always keen to let him know that he appreciated it. Frazer chuckled. I did have some help, he said, as he winked at the other man. Don't worry, it'll all become clear in the future. Brett didn't answer. Frazer was always true to his word, so he decided to change the subject. Natalia's getting a lot of trouble from a client, Brett said. I guess so, said Frazer. What's going on? Brett gave him a brief summary. It turned out that the client was Future-Proof Technology, run by none other than Simon Draper, an old classmate of Natalia's. Do I need to cancel the contract with Future-Proof Technology? Asked Frazer. I can't believe her former classmate would want to make trouble for her. I don't think we need to be hasty, said Brett. After all, this company doesn't compare to ours. Brett was worried. He had set up the contract so Natalia could get experience in her new role. It turned out the contract was causing her more trouble than it was worth. If he canceled the contract, Natalia would think it was all her fault. Frazer looked at him. Leave it to me, he said, as he finished his coffee and left. Frazer left Brett's office and went straight to Natalia's department. He didn't have to wait long before she came out of her office. What are you doing here? She asked him, worried he was skipping work. You don't seem to take your job very seriously, she added sharply. Brett sent me to help you with some of your clients, he mumbled. Oh, okay, she said, relaxing. If Brett had sent him, perhaps he was trying harder than she realized. But I don't know why, she continued. If you can't do anything as simple as selling a house, how does he think you can help me? Frazer shrugged. Well, I have a meeting with my new client. Come with me. When the time comes, just keep quiet, she ordered as they departed. A few minutes later, they arrived at a nearby fine dining restaurant, where Natalia had booked a private room. Frazer, wait for me outside, she said. I'll call for you if anything happens. She paused. Actually, no, she said thoughtfully. It might be more useful if you stayed with me. Okay, he said, following her into the restaurant but waiting outside the door of the private room. They were the last to arrive. Simon Draper was already there, along with two other pot-bellied men. They were all drinking. Natalia, you're finally here, said Simon happily. Come, let me introduce you to my associates. This is Mr. Phelps, and this is Mr. Bell. You may have heard of them. They all shook hands, and Simon pulled out a chair for Natalia. Let's raise a toast, said Mr. Phelps, looking appreciatively at Natalia. Simon didn't lie, he thought. She is indeed a beautiful young woman. Natalia sat down uncomfortably. Simon, she said quietly, I thought we would discuss some private business. Why have you invited friends? Natalia, he said patronizingly. They are here for you. I've told them about your potential, and they are eager to help you with your career. I see, she said cautiously. Thank you. She wasn't sure if she believed him, but she decided to go along with his plan for the time being to see where it led them. Don't thank me, he replied smoothly. Thank Mr. Phelps and Mr. Bell. "In that case," she said, smiling brightly at the two men, "let's drink that toast you suggested." She held up a glass of wine that Simon had handed to her. "To Mr. Phelps and Mr. Bell, thank you for taking the time to meet me."
"To Natalia,"
they replied in unison, drinking their wine too. Natalia drank her glass of wine in one gulp, much to the men's surprise. Mr. Bell actually spilled some of his wine. Such was his eagerness to get to know Natalia better. Simon hastily refilled her glass.
"Cheers,"
he thundered.
"Here's to future cooperation."
Natalia drank the second glass in one gulp again. Her face was beginning to turn rosy from the alcohol, much to the delight of the men in the room. "When are we going to start talking about cooperation?" asked Natalia, realizing she was beginning to slur her words.
"As soon as I have finished drinking this glass of wine,"
said Simon, a small smile on his face. Natalia was in a daze, not realizing that someone had refilled her glass. She picked it up and started to drink it, but a jolt from behind her frightened her. Someone had grabbed her arm. As she shrugged it off, she looked back to see that Simon had taken off his tie and was walking toward her. "Simon, what are you?" she started to ask, but he interrupted her.
"Natalia, we go back many years," he said. "You know you can trust me. Between us, we'll go far in the world of business."
Mr. Phelps and Mr. Bell exchanged sinister smiles.
"You've excelled yourself this time,"
said Mr. Phelps, rubbing his hands together.
"You've definitely got my contract."
"Hold on, I'm first," said Mr. Bell. He strode toward Natalia, hunger in his eyes. She jumped aside, knocking her chair over in her haste to escape. "Frazer, help!" she shouted, running for the door. Simon laughed loudly.
"Natalia, do you honestly think that good-for-nothing husband of yours will be able to help you?" he asked. "No matter what we do, he'll just stand by and watch."
No sooner were his words out when the door opened with a heavy kick. Simon watched Frazer burst in. He laughed.
"What are you gonna do about it?"
he asked Frazer mockingly.
"Mr. Phelps, Mr. Bell, do you mind if Natalia's husband watches us?" "You get dirtier every time,"
said Mr. Phelps as he walked toward Natalia, undoing his tie. Frazer didn't hesitate. He marched straight over to Mr. Phelps and punched him. Mr. Phelps fell backward onto the table, glasses flying everywhere as he landed. Before he could react, Frazer kicked him. He fell off the table and landed with a thud on the floor. Simon watched in terror, a small patch of liquid forming at the front of his pants.
"I thought he couldn't fight,"
Simon said to himself. Frazer ignored Simon. He rushed to the corner of the room where Natalia had curled herself to feel protected. Her eyes were blurred, her face was red, and she was still murmuring to herself. "Frazer, save me." Simon began to recover his composure.
"Frazer, do you know who you just hit?"
he asked, his voice trembling.
"These two men are very important, you know. They'll not let you get away with this,"
he added, his confidence returning.
"Your martial arts skills won't save you."
Natalia had contacted him in the past to see if he had any jobs for Frazer. He had responded to her purely because he wanted to take advantage of her. Now, his plan had backfired spectacularly. Not only had he upset the two men he had been trying to impress, but it appeared that he had underestimated Frazer, too.
To watch the full episode, install the Pocket FM app